Hi everyone, it's Alina Roscoe, Youth Ministry Apprentice, here again for our second story called The Perfect Tree and Favorite Christmas Carols. And it starts by showing us Deck the Halls and Jingle Bells, which are two good ones. And then it starts. The morning broke late, gray, and cold. If you had the nose for such a thing, you would know that soon it would snow. And for some of us, it's already started snowing. Oliver Wendell Badger stood with his nose pressed against the window pane, his furry face framed in a frosty circle. He should be sleeping, he knew, but the older he got, the more difficult it became to sleep through the long, dark winter, like a sensible badger should. The streets were filled with noisy cars, and the fields, which had been quiet in November, were now busy with children out of school for Christmas. Their running feet thudded over Ollie's snowy roof as he tried to snooze beneath the banks of a frozen mill creek. Impossible, he thought. Trying to sleep is useless in this noisy place. Many seasons ago, when he had been a small ball of fur, the banks of Mill Creek had been a quiet place, full of new and exciting adventures. His parents had taken him for long, quiet walks through the summer woods, hunting berries and luscious roots for dinner. They would bring these home in a large basket woven from the reeds that grew along the creek, and his mother would bake the most delicious wild root soup and mouth-watering hot berry pie for dessert. But those days were gone. Now Oliver Wendell Badger lived alone, with only his memories of those long-ago walks. His only family now was his close friend, Stanley Livingston Hare, who lived in the woods by Mill Creek with a large family of field mice. Stanley was a crabby old hare, but his conversation was all that Ollie had to keep him company on these sleepless winter days and evenings. And Stanley made the most delectable crab apple turnovers, which he served with piping hot pine needle tea. As always, the thought of Stanley's warm hutch and friendly food made Ollie's mouth water. Perhaps a mid-winter dinner would be just the thing to calm Ollie's frazzled nerves. "A holiday feast!" exclaimed Ollie aloud. "Why, Hare and I could put together a holiday celebration as if we were a family. The field mice could help, Hare could bake his scrumptious turnovers, and the mouse family could make their favorite acorn bread, and I—" Ollie stopped there. "I really can't make anything that would go along with the feast," he thought. "My meager dishes are fit only for dining alone." Ollie was thoughtful. To a knowledgeable observer, one who is familiar with the ways of badgers, Ollie's twitching nose meant that he was deep in thought. After some minutes, he sprang from the window and threw on his winter coat. "I'll bring the tree," he shouted. "We can't have a proper holiday without a tree." A big green tree covered with popcorn and wild cranberries and pieces of dried flowers. A tree to be sure. Grabbing his little axe, which he used to gather small twigs for his winter fire, Ollie burst from his small front door beneath the banks of Mill Creek and started off across the snowfields, in search of the perfect tree. As Ollie walked, he sang to himself in his quiet badger voice, a little Christmas song his mother had taught him many years ago. Oh, Christmas tree, how evergreen your branches, not only green when summer glows, but in the winter when it snows. Oh, Christmas tree, how evergreen your branches. Through the cold morning, Ollie searched for the perfect tree. He searched high and he searched low, but nowhere could he find a tree just right for his needs. That is, a tree small enough for a badger to cut down and carry through the woods to the hutch of Stanley Livingston Hare. Ollie had just about his own height, and it was the greenest tree he had ever seen. Ollie was wild with delight. He ran in his fastest badger fashion to the tree. A beautiful tree, he thought, and a trunk just small enough for my axe. He dug out the snow around the base. He brushed the ice from his axe. He raised it high in the air above his head, and then he let it down slowly. The tree, like Ollie, was small and lonely, but it had grown in this spot for many years. It would be such a shame to cut it now before it had a chance to grow to the size of the other large trees in the surrounding forest. It would never know the pleasure of swaying in the summer breeze or having the company of birds and squirrels who would build homes in its branches. It would never sing as its brothers and sisters did with the wind to the nighttime sky. Oh, it would be a bright and silly few weeks in the home of Stanley Hare. It would be dressed in holiday colors for a brief time, but then it would turn brown as it died. Its needles would fall off, and eventually it would be cast into the snow or burned in the hearth, giving its last offering as heat and the sweet smell of a spruce wood fire. No, Ollie couldn't do it. But what about the party? What would a party be without a bright holiday tree? This was too much to think about for such a small badger. He would go to Stanley's hutch and ask him what to do. Stanley always had an answer, sometimes to questions Ollie hadn't even asked. "Show me the tree," was Stanley's answer. He had thought the idea of a party was a fine one. He had agreed to make his famous turnovers and pine needle tea, and even a holiday punch of melted snow and sweet maple syrup. The field mice were already baking acorn bread and were eager to string popcorn and cranberries for the tree. See, the mice are all getting ready for decorating the tree. How nice. But Stanley understood better than anyone, and if the lonely badger saw something special in the little tree, then he must also see it. So, wrapped against the cold and accompanied by the field mice father, the friends trudged off toward where Ollie's perfect tree grew. "There it is!" cried Ollie, obviously excited again at the sight of such a perfect tree. And sure enough, it was. Stanley agreed that it was the finest tree he had ever seen. The field mouse father scampered around the trunk in excitement, slipping on the ice and making loud, squeaky noises. A fine tree indeed. So fine, in fact, that Ollie began to hum again the song of the Christmas tree. Soon, his quiet hum was joined by Stanley Hare's strong voice, and before long the field mouse father added his squeaky sounds to the verse. "Oh, Christmas tree, how evergreen your branches, not only green when summer glows, but in the winter when it snows. Oh, Christmas tree, how evergreen your branches." The words hung before them like their frosty breath for a moment. then disappeared into the winter air. You are right, said Stanley. We cannot cut down such a fine tree, even for our party. We must do without the tree. Ollie's furry face grew long. But I so wanted to bring something to the party, he said. You are all providing food and cheer, and I have nothing to bring but my hungry self. And what is a holiday party without a tree? Stanley thought for a long moment. The day was rapidly drawing to a close. The moon could now be seen in the still blue sky, and he knew that night was not far off. Of course, for most wild things, night was a time of activity, but there were still turnovers to bake and punch to make. We'll decorate it here, he said. The field mouse family should be finished stringing the popcorn and cranberries by now. We will bring them to the tree and put them on here in the woods. What a splendid idea, cried Ollie. That way we won't have to cut it down and we shall have a holiday tree after all. And so in no time at all, they were decorating the small green tree with all manner of festive dress. The field mouse family dragged the many ornaments they had made to the tree as Stanley and Ollie hung them on the branches. Look, even though they're small mice, they're dragging all of the ornaments so that they can help decorate the tree. The red and white strings of popcorn and cranberries stood out brightly against the dark green branches. It wasn't long before the small tree looked as big as the largest tree in the forest. They all stood back in wonder to gaze at their fine work. There now, isn't that a fine job, said Stanley Hare. And indeed it was. A beautifully decorated holiday tree now stood where once there was only a little lonely sapling. A fine job, murmured the mouse family together. And look how beautiful the tree is now. In the quiet of the moment, Stanley began to sing. It was a song so soft that it seemed to become a part of the night, quiet forest itself. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. The friends stood for a while admiring their work. Then Stanley said, we have our tree, but our meal is still to be made, and it is very far from here to my house. We had better get going if we are to have a feast tonight. Ollie knew that he was right, but he hated to leave his lovely tree so soon. See, they're having a lovely gathering around, singing together. But it doesn't have to have a star for the top, he said, hoping to delay for just a while longer. We have nothing to make a star from, Ollie, said the field mouse father. Besides, we have done enough decorating for one day. It is getting quite cold and our stomachs are hungry for hot acorn bread and crab apple turnovers. Quite right, agreed Stanley. We must be going now. So together they turned and began the walk back to the hutch of Stanley Livingston Hare, where dinner would soon be served to the cold and hungry gathering. I am happy, said Ollie, that we did not cut down the little tree, but I am sad because I did not get to bring something for our holiday feast. But you did, said Stanley. You brought us a gift we may all cherish, not only now, but through the whole year. You brought us compassion and love for other living things, Ollie. By refusing to cut down the small tree, you showed us that you care for others, for all of our friends, and no matter how lowly or small. And because of your gift, the other dwellers of the forest will now be able to enjoy the sight of our perfect tree for years to come. You have brought the true spirit of giving into our lives. Oh, what a nice friend moment. Despite the cold, Ollie left warm inside. As they reached the edge of the clearing, they were about to pass into the woods toward the house of Stanley Livingston Hare, but they turned to have one last look at their perfect tree. It stood still as it would for many years to come, dark green against a fading day, whispering softly in the winter wind. And as they watched, the evening star rose behind it and came to rest for a brief, shining moment above its crown. So that's them admiring their tree from afar. And we see the beautiful tree, shining star above it, right? And that would be the star that showed all of the people where to find baby Jesus. That's the symbolism of this. And they end it by showing us two more songs called It Came Upon a Midnight Clear and We Wish You a Merry Christmas. And my friends, I wish you a very Merry Christmas and upcoming a Happy New Year.